The judge has denied bail for the leftist man accused of firebombing the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania's home while he slept there with his children and his wife. It's a horrifying story. Governor Shapiro has come out condemning political violence. I'm glad he did. I'd appreciate it if he did a little bit more previously, but we'll take what we can get for now. We've also got the story to CNN where Taylor Lorenz, if you don't know who she is all over Netflix right now. She celebrates Luigi Mangione, alleged to have murdered the CEO of United Healthcare. She says that he was a morally good man. And it is this, the Mangione effect, which is resulting in an escalation of political violence. And just today, police swarmed United Healthcare offices and apparently arrested or apprehended some suspect. We don't know exactly what happened, but I'm going to tell you, the left has been cheering for this. It's been escalating. And now the man who is being accused of firebombing the governor's house in Pennsylvania, he says he's a registered socialist. He's a BLM supporter. None of this is surprising to anybody who's been paying attention. So we'll talk about that. Then we've got the story of El Salvador. The Democrats are apoplectic over Nayib Bukele saying he's not going to release a terrorist so the U.S. can bring him back to the United States. This story is absolutely insane. A district court judge ordered the president to effectively kidnap a foreign citizen out of their prison and bring it back to the United States, which makes no sense. And he has no authority to do. And they have no authority to dictate. So now the story is going crazy with Democrats saying Trump is a totalitarian who is going to throw people out of this country. And get this, a hot mic. Donald Trump caught saying homegrowns are next. To be honest, we don't know exactly what he said on the hot mic, but it is going around the liberal circuit, claiming that Trump is telling Nayib Bukele to build 5 more prisons to house American citizens. I don't know that's actually what Trump was saying. It sounds like Trump was making a joke and saying it in jest in reference to what the media was claiming. And people in the room all start laughing. Oh, that's serious. Whatever, man. I don't know. So we're going to talk about that and so much more. But before we do, we got a great sponsor, my friends. It is Tax Network USA. Go to tnusa.com/Tim, my friends. Tax season is officially here. And the IRS is turning up the heat with the April 15th deadline fast approaching. Now is the time to act. And if you've fallen behind on filing or owe back taxes, delay will only make things worse. Every day you wait increases your risk and the consequences. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed every day and powerful enforcement tools like property seizures, bank levies, and wage garnishments at its disposal, the IRS is applying pressure at a level we haven't seen in years, driven by heightened administrative scrutiny. Don't make the mistake of facing the IRS alone. Tax Network USA is here to help you take control. Whether your tax issue is $10,000 or $10 million, their team of skilled attorneys and seasoned negotiators have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt using proven strategies. Your consultation is absolutely free. Don't wait for another letter or a surprise levy. Put a stop to the growing interest, penalties, and threats, and take back control of your finances. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Tim. Tax season is here, my friends. Don't wait till April 15th. Beat the IRS to it. Don't forget to also head over to Cast Brew. Pick up some delicious coffee. Got Appalachian Nights, Ian's Graphene Dream, and Luck of the Seamus. And a big announcement. The Culture War Debate Live will be Friday at noon till 2, at least for now, as we are gearing up for the pilot of our first Culture War Live event on stage with you as members. Tickets are now available free for members of the Timcast Discord at timcast.com, where you as members are going to be invited on stage live on the show on the 10th biggest live stream in the country to debate us and maybe Jack Posobiec. If he's there, who knows? Maybe not. But we're going to have a wide range of guests. Alex Stein will be present at our first event. And if you're a member of the Timcast Discord server right now and you get tickets to attend, we are going to put up the debate issue in about a week or so, for which you can submit your general position. And then if you are at the event, you may be invited up on stage. Limited time, so we can't get to everybody, but we're thinking maybe 6 individuals will join us on the debate stage. Think Kill Tony meets Jubilee. It's going to be fun. Smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. We got a big panel joining us tonight. As I mentioned, Jack Posobiec's here.
What's going on, man? What's going on to all the crew out there?
You were just hosting the War Room from Timcast.
We did. So in a follow-up to folks who haven't followed the War Room Timcast crossover episodes with Jack Posobiec guest hosting, we did the war. So Steve was out today from the War Room. He had me guest hosting, but then all of a sudden it was like, hey, Jack, can you come do Timcast last minute? All right, but I got to do War Room. How am I going to do that? Well, just like when we were in Butler, Pennsylvania, and we needed a way to power the war rooms. Now, remember, Butler, this was back in October. Steve, the second rally, not the first one, of course. The second one, Steve's in prison, and I'm hosting the morning show. And the Secret Service, because they had the whole place on lockdown, they said, you can't have a gas-powered generator there in the parking lot. And I said, you mean like a car? Aren't all cars gas-powered generators? It's a parking lot full of cars. Well, they still said no.
Wow.
It was not allowed. And I said, well, I need some kind of large, mobile battery that has enough power to generate, to power the entire war room. And I kid you not, like 5-10 minutes later, Tim calls me, hey, Jack, are you going to this Butler rally? Because I'm driving up in the Cybertruck. And I'm like, what? And it worked out. We powered the war room from the Cybertruck right there at Butler. And it actually it went like kind of viral. Just like not anything we were saying, but just the fact that we did it.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
That he does.
Right as Jack was needing a large generator, I called and let him know I had the Cybertruck on the way. And he was like, can I power my show from the Cybertruck?
Power the show from the Cybertruck?
That would be the coolest thing ever.
And we certainly did. So we did the show from here today, and the epic saga continues.
Right on. We got a couple more guests. We got Cnosky.
Howdy, guys. You know, I was here a month ago, and I decided I loved it so much, I just hid under the table. Tim found me, said, hey, you got to do the show. And I was like, fine.
If you're here.
You know.
Yeah.
He hasn't been paying me this whole time, but, I've been finding table scraps, found some water. I survived. But happy to be back. I brought someone with me, though. My co-host of the Quiet Part Pod, Michael.
Hello, I'm Michael Leo. Some of you might know me from the Discord. You should totally join. And I'm the co-host of The Quiet Part Live with Chris, and also a working man.
Right on.
Love it.
Phil's
Hello,
also
everybody.
here.
My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. Let's get into it.
Here's the news from the AP. Judge denies bail for man accused of setting fire at Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence. The latest development. For those who didn't know, the Democrat governor had his home firebombed while he was sleeping with his wife and children by a, quote, registered socialist and BLM supporter, allegedly, say the police, by the name of Cody Balmer. Well, I should say his name is Cody Balmer, and he's alleged to have firebombed the house. He's been charged with arson, supporting general leftist memes and BLM tropes and things of that nature, as well as comments he's made as to the Ahmaud Arbery case, showing he's clearly on the side of Black Lives Matter. And this is what you get with the Mangione effect. Now, the AP reports Cody Balmer spoke with the public defender at times as he appeared in court late Monday afternoon after being released from the hospital where he'd been taken after an unrelated medical incident. Balmer of Harrisburg told police he planned to beat Governor Shapiro with a small sledgehammer if he encountered him after breaking into the building. According to court documents, a motive for the attack, including whether it had anything to do with Shapiro's politics or religious beliefs, wasn't immediately clear. Now, initially, one of the first things we saw on X was that people believed it was an anti-Semitic attack because on X, everything's going to be about Jews or Israel, apparently. And Shapiro was having Passover dinner, so it's not completely unfounded. However, the key speculation right now is that this guy, he had his house...
It wasn't during the dinner.
No, it was like that night, and the dinner was like set up. So here's what's really fascinating is, Jack, you're gonna love this one. Apparently, the socialist had his home seized by the state and then auctioned off, and the socialist got angry, so he firebombed the governor's home, allegedly.
Wait, his home? I think you mean
The governor's.
our home.
Don't you mean our?
Oh yeah,
Right. The socialist,
Indeed.
the socialist was very
Well-
upset about his private property rights being
Violated.
violated.
So,
even though he supports literal abolishment of all private property.
So this was funny because I was trying to explain the story to my wife, and I said, I was like, hey, remember that this morning we saw the story of the guy who firebombed that house? Turns out he was a socialist. And she was like, what, do they know the motive? And I was like, I guess he was mad because the state seized his property and auctioned it off. And she was like, the socialist. And I was like, right. And she was like, no, the socialist was mad the state took his house. Mm-hmm. And I started laughing.
I mean, it's so good. She's doing great, by the way. Got
She
to
is.
see her. Got to see the family a little bit. Glad to see that's all doing well. Congrats, by the way,
Thank you.
officially. I don't think I've seen you since. But No, this is a case where, look, I took a lot of crap last year for putting this book out about leftist violence and anti-communism and saying that I saw what I called the rise of the unhumans.
Yeah.
And every single mainstream outlet under the sun came at us and attacked me. You know, you're fascist, you're crazy, you're calling for a return of Franco, and all these things that we didn't actually say in the book anywhere. Came on the show many times, talk about unhumans. And then immediately, 4 days after we put the book out, Donald Trump is taking bullets in Pennsylvania, and then the violence has only escalated since there. Multiple assassination attempts. And then, not only that, you have this actual assassination of a CEO who, as we talk about in the book, leftist violence always targets specific classes. So in the Bolshevik Russia, you saw the kulaks. In China, it was the petty bourgeoisie. And it's always, anyone associated with the current quote-unquote status quo. Predominantly in the United States today, that is affluent white Christian males. And so that's the phrase that's the phase that it's taken on now, which is sort of more of a form of cultural Marxism. And so I just kept saying the left is playing footsies with this like crazy. And now, like Tim, you mentioned earlier, Taylor Lorenz, she's on. They're platforming this. Oh, we need to understand the Free Luigi movement. You got scumbags like Bill Burr going.
There was a long time where it was almost with a wink and a nod, and they wouldn't outwardly admit it. They wouldn't say that they're looking for class war. But now if you listen to AOC and Bernie, who are drawing thousands of people on their tour, or you listen to people like Taylor Lorenz or any other prominent leftists that are actually leftists, they're saying things that are very much class war, and they're the lionizing people like Luigi Mangione. We have a massive problem with the left in the United States, because even if they're popular, they're still effing wrong, and they'll destroy the country.
Yeah. Well, and you got Luigi Mangione coming out. And I remember, by the way, so you look at the two events. So Luigi Mangione gets arrested, by the way, in Pennsylvania in December of 2024. Remember, he fled from New York, then was caught in Pennsylvania. So Josh Shapiro was involved in that. Butler, Pennsylvania, again, also Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro's involved in that. And I remember Shapiro, after both of those events, including Luigi Mangione, speaking out against political violence. So I'll give him credit for that. He did actually do that, including Mangione directly. But at the same time, it's like, dude, look at your party, man. You want to spend all your time going out and talking about the right and talking about Trump supporters, but look at the problem in your own party, on your own side, the footsies that they play with this. I'm not condoning political violence anywhere, but the point is you should always oppose all political violence. And we certainly haven't seen that on the left. And again, you're talking about the Netflix stuff, the Taylor Lorenz stuff. Dude, I've seen Free Luigi bumper stickers out in the wild in the DC area, just driving around, and you see them around, and you see the mainstream now platforming this kind of stuff, and it's only going to get worse. The algorithm, I think, drives a lot of this stuff as well. That's why you're not really seeing. Scott Greer had a really good point where he said that millennials did more of like the mass movement kind of stuff, like Antifa, BLM, whereas Gen Z they want to go viral. Right. So they want to have their moment in the sun. They want to have their moment where they get to go viral. There was that kid in Wisconsin who killed his parents recently. Yeah.
Right. Much less communistic.
Saying that he was wanted to do that and somehow a plot to get Trump because he was going to use their money to fuel this or something like that. There was another guy who just got arrested last week for wanting to kill Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, by the way. He went by the name of Mr. Satan on YouTube. Even though Thomas Matthew Crooks did not live in Butler, he actually lived in Bethel Park, which is about 45 minutes away. But obviously, he tried to kill him in Butler, PA. So point being is this is getting worse. This is actually getting a lot worse, and they're not going for the large scale movements anymore. That thing the other day was like totally paid in, where like Rachel Maddow was supporting it. You remember like the anti-Doge protest they were having? It's a total joke. But the actual feral left, they're not doing the Antifa Black Bloc stuff anymore. They're just going out and picking targets and going for it.
Oh, yeah. There's also the dog whistling that happens, right? So you'll see these attacks, and immediately the left is going to jump on there saying, oh, is MAGA going to come out and condemn these attacks? Is MAGA going to do something about it? Yesterday, I'm seeing calls to condemn this violent act, which I'm happy to condemn that act. But it's like, are we not okay with this? Well, of course we're not okay with this. But is it supposed to be because I'm not okay with it because it's MAGA? Well, no. I need to know who did it before I can condemn them. The act is condemnable by itself, but that's how they get these stories out there. But they paint the picture like they're perfectly fine, and it's all us doing it. And
Yeah.
it needs
It's the weirdest thing when I go on Reddit, and the response from all these people is that the right is dangerously violent, and I'm just thinking to myself, can we name one Republican, like prominent conservative Republican, who went and committed acts of terror and violence in the past couple of years?
Of course not.
I mean, maybe one. I don't know. Is there one?
I mean,
I'm not
they
saying none.
So the left would say January 6th.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, but what about 4 years?
I got to.
I guess technically that we can give that one 4 years. January 6th, and then they would lie and say that people died.
Right. So they would claim that January 6th is a terrorist attack. Well, then, of course, there was also the Jan 6 pipe bomb bomber. Why don't we just go get that guy? That guy,
I agree.
you know?
You know what? The left is completely correct. We better find out who did
We
that.
should find out exactly who did that.
But if you really want to know,
Call up Kash Patel right now.
if you really want to know when the last time right-wing political violence happened, you're going to have to go back like 150 years, and Abraham Lincoln was the one that did that.
Huh?
Oh, yeah, I got you. Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, it's ridiculous. It's horrible. And the left will sit and I would say prior to this, the FBI would and the left would say, oh, it's all right wing violence. It's all right wing violence. Right wing violence is the greatest threat. And yet I can list names: Luigi Mangione, Nikita Katsep, Sean Mompers, this guy Cody Ballmer in Pennsylvania, Thomas Matthew Crooks, Ryan Wesley Routh, and again and again and again, and they'll look at you until you're blue in the face. By the way, I had a friend who had a leftist that he knows, like in real life, said to him recently about the Cody Ballmer case, and said, well, wait a minute, this is clearly a leftist, is a BLM supporter, says right there, avowed, registered socialist. Oh, well, you see, this is Trump's fault.
Yeah.
How is this Trump's fault? And this was the answer. I was actually surprised. I was so surprised that I was like, I'm almost proud of you for being able to accomplish this Olympic feat of mental gymnastics. They said it's Trump's fault because Trump has emboldened the white rage of white male violence in society today. And you look at the stuff this guy posted, and it's like, wait a minute, Antifa was always white males. They were always white males on the left from the very start of Antifa. That's by and large. By the way, a lot of BLM was white too, by the way, like if you actually looked at the composition of the rallies. And so when you're talking about this, it's like, we never talk about it this way. We talk about the political ideologies and pathologies that are driving the violence. You're the ones who try to put all these weird, racial identity markers on all of it. We just follow the facts where they go.
Another aspect of it is the accountability part. I think because there is a complete lack of accountability with the leftist actions, or at least an attempt to seek accountability, they run roughshod basically. And it'd be nice to see like the FBI and stuff take this more seriously, and perhaps they are. And maybe there's investigations that are underway that I'm unaware of. But it is getting worse, and it has been escalating. And I'd hate for it to get even worse than where it's at right now.
There's been so much leftist influence in the government and in popular culture and in the national zeitgeist. You have the media consistently running cover for anything any leftist does. There was a time where it was just like, you'd hear the news or whatever kind of glossing over the politics of the left, or glossing over everyone remembers mostly peaceful riots, etc. And the right was kind of outraged and kind of like, what, this is ridiculous, etc. Now, again, we talk about prominent leftists that are saying things like, well, Luigi Mangione, man, and they're behind they endorse the violence now.
Well,
they'll say, well, it shouldn't be violent, but when they make excuses. Well, when you push people too far, etc., and taking agency completely away from the people that are actually acting.
Right.
Let's jump to this clip. This next story we have from CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan. Oh, Donnie boy. You see, the New York Post reports Taylor Lorenz defends Luigi Mangione fangirls in glib CNN interview. Morally good man, she says. Here's the clip.
Hilarious to see these millionaire media pundits on TV clutching their pearls about someone standing a murderer when this is the United States of America, as if we don't lionize criminals, as if we don't have, we don't stand murderers of all sorts, and we give them Netflix shows. There's a huge disconnect between the narratives and angles that sort of mainstream media pushes and what the American public feels. And you see that in moments like this. And I can tell you, I saw the biggest audience growth that I've ever seen, because people were like, oh, some journalist is actually speaking to the anger that we feel.
The women who gather outside court in New York.
So you're going to see women especially that feel like, oh my God, right? Like, here's this man who's revolutionary, who's famous, who's handsome, who's young, who's smart. He's a person that seems this morally good man, which is hard to find.
Yeah, I just realized women will literally date an assassin before they swipe right on me. That's where we are. I'm sure you wouldn't like to be compared to a Trump supporter, but some of how people cannot understand why people have sympathies for Mangione strikes me as the same as a lot of media not understanding why people support Trump.
I totally agree.
It's because a lot of people are just really, really desperate.
They want somebody to take on the system. They want somebody to tear down these barbaric establishment institutions.
They literally just compared Donald Trump to Luigi Mangione when he asked or stated that, some people can't understand why people like Trump. Maybe that's like Luigi Mangione. No, Donald Trump isn't going around murdering random people. Luigi Mangione is accused of just shooting a guy in the back several times. That changed nothing. It didn't alter the system in any meaningful way. So not only was he insane, if he really did do this, if he's alleged to do, he's also completely ineffective. Now, I like Donald Trump because not only is he not going around killing people, but he's extremely effective. He's getting the job done.
Yeah, Taylor Lorenz is giving fuel to this kind of pathology, and I'll actually, if I can, I'll take a page out of the left, and I will actually try to explain a little bit better what I think Donnie is trying to say there. By the way, can we talk about how ridiculous Donnie is dressed in the black shades and the black? What is this? Like this guy's? We're supposed to take this guy seriously, and that's how he dresses on CNN.
He knows it too. He mentioned that he would, they won't swipe right on him or whatever.
And yeah, and Taylor Lorenz. I mean, she's obviously old enough to be Luigiano's mother. Which, I don't know. Maybe she can clear that up for us if she wants to. You could check the Wayback Machine, but apparently all of her stuff has been deleted there for some strange reason. Don't know why. But what the anger at the system that is palpable out there is real. It's 100% real. And one of the reasons for that is because the Gini coefficient in the United States is so off. And what they're talking about is kind of like the original, Tim, you might know something about this, the original Occupy Wall Street protests, where it was talking about the fact that the 1% in this country has gotten so incredibly wealthy off the backs of the middle class, off the backs of the working class, off of globalism, which, President Trump is talking about with the tariffs and all of these things, which they're attempting to try to rectify. And the issue is, so people can see these huge disparities in our society, which are real. It's just real. It's just true. And there's two paths here, right? So the Trump path is, hey, you know what? You're right. Globalists have been absolutely screwing over the working class and middle class in this country. We agree, as a matter of fact, which I know is probably not like a conservative thing to say, but it's just factual. So rather than destroy the country, what if we lift the ground? What if we actually lift people up into better working class conditions, better towns, better streets, better villages, better jobs, etc.? That's the populist right. Then there's the populist left. That's just like, let's just kill everyone.
Yeah, tear it all down.
And destroy everything and go in with all of this because we want to and we hate them. And you have movies like Parasite, by the way, which was given an Academy Award, which is all about killing the rich. It's literally about moral justification for killing rich people. And they gave this movie an Academy Award. And it started off this huge push, I think, on the left that you also see in culture where it's total. And Taylor Lorenz is on Netflix. She's got a contract there for what's her show called? Eat the Rich, right? It goes again and again and again.
Where's her show airing?
I believe she has a thing on Netflix called Eat the Rich.
So there's one of the top films the other day,
she's in the one where it's called Eat the Rich.
There's one called Bad Influencers.
Yeah, this is the older one, the GameStop one.
When you so you go on Netflix and you go to the top films or whatever, and Bad Influencers, the dark side of kidfluencing, the moment you highlight it, Taylor Lorenz pops up and starts talking. They are putting her in all of this establishment media. And you heard her. She said she saw the biggest audience growth from this, indicating the left is violent, they want more violence, and she's milking it like the grifter she is.
Not just that, but can I ask this question? When has Taylor Lorenz not been mainstream media? She's pointing us out that, oh, hey, I'm not this, but I'm seeing this growth because of this, because, you know...
Finally, a journalist is...
When has she not been this?
She's always been an establishment corporate shill, and here she is still to this day.
Yeah. It's being an establishment corporate chill.
It's the same play as Bernie Sanders does when, as soon as he became a millionaire, then it was the billionaires. They know, they don't think of themselves as the rich. They think of themselves as the working class. They think, I'm one of you. But they're completely and totally detached from reality. And that's why the Democrats are unpopular nowadays. That's why they've had such a massive problem with the middle class and with the working class, because the working class realized that the Democrats were the party of the very, very rich and the completely dependent.
Did you see the video of Bernie Sanders, by the way, that somebody put on X where
Coachella?
It was it was like 30 different frames of Bernie talking throughout the past 50 years. And he's been the exact same person in every one of these frames for 30 years. He hasn't changed one bit.
So Bernie, to me,
millionaires and billionaires to just billionaires.
To me, it seems like Bernie at the time, and certainly we saw this in 2016, it was a version of controlled opposition. So they knew that there would be this populist left political push, but the Democrat establishment wanted the ability to try to harness that for political support at election time. So you would have Bernie, you would have him go out there, you'd have him run up in 2016, then you'd take the nomination away from him, right, which we saw in the original WikiLeaks, by the way, prior to any of the other stuff that came out, and which nobody talks about anymore, that showed that they stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders in 2016. But then you have Bernie endorse Hillary and then try to cleave off, which obviously didn't work in 2016, but the goal was always to get those people back under the establishment tent, and then they just give them another mansion.
Well, it's basically the Charlie Brown Christmas episode.
Yeah.
I do love how Bernie, he's the largest recipient of insurance lobbying dollars, and he says, not the CEOs, only the employees. And it's like, so the employees of the big insurance companies feel like you're the right candidate to maintain their jobs and their way of life. What does that mean about you, Bernie?
Yeah.
I don't think he thought about that.
Nope. I don't know.
Well, somebody's got to administer that single-payer healthcare system that we're actually going to go to, right?
You know, if what is the end goal of what Taylor Lorenz and allegedly Luigi Mangione want? Nobody would want to work in healthcare. Nobody. So all the healthcare CEOs quit. The companies all crumble. And then the government tries appointing somebody to run government healthcare, but nobody wants to do it because government healthcare will be run worse.
Their whole thing is they want single-payer healthcare. We were talking about this before the show. They want single-payer healthcare that is limitless. Because as soon as you get government-mandated single-payer healthcare, there's always waiting lists because things like doctors are not unlimited. Like you have to have a system in place to actually give the care to people. And if you don't provide incentives to these people that to become doctors and nurses and stuff, then you end up with too many people trying to go to too few doctors. So the only option you have is make people wait.
Well, yeah, you got to be able to incentivize the doctors to want to do this. They got to go spend 15 years in school, and you're still creating that class system. I have to pay you more. I got to put you above everyone else to make you want to do this, but you have to be treated the same as everyone. No, this doesn't work.
Yeah, it'd be they might actually have a good argument if they focused on an honest path towards this system and addressing things like obesity and other things that people can control in their own life, and then inevitably reduce cost in medical care altogether. But
I just want to briefly mention, too, before we move on to the next segment, that we have the story from the Daily Mail. There's not much information here, but the police rushed to United Healthcare's Minnesota headquarters, and an hour later they added a suspect had been detained without incident. saying there's no threat to the public. We're continuing to clear the scene at this time. So we don't know exactly what happened. They say a police stationed an officer at the site as they heightened security in the days after Mangione allegedly gunned down their boss, Brian Thompson. So I'm wondering if the Mangione effect is just really expanding this rapidly, and now people are targeting the company itself. And this is what the left is going to do.
You're going to want to get copycats. People are going to say, I want to be the next Luigi, or people who say, I want to follow in Luigi's footsteps. So you're going to get a, rally around the leader effect. You're going to get a bandwagon effect. More people are going to want to do this. And then they're going to find out that, oh, by the way, Taylor Lorenz is going to go on Netflix and go on CNN and talk about how great I am. And then I'm going to be a hero. And people are going to put my name on bumper stickers too, just like Free Luigi. Here's
the worst part of about what Taylor Lorenz was doing and what Donnie O'Sullivan was doing. So right now, 55% of single men are actively dating, but only 34% of single women are actively dating. This was News Nation published this 2 weeks ago. A lot of lonely young men. Just watched Taylor Lorenz talk about how women love revolutionary murderers.
Yep.
She is going on TV, screaming in the faces of desperate, lonely young men. She wants them to engage in violence.
Yeah.
That's the terrifying thing.
Yeah. And she just said it there, to your point. I saw my biggest follower bump ever.
Well, yeah. And all the women are cheering outside of the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Well, here's the next story in all this.
Hybristophilia, right? Hybristophilia.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Here's a story from NBC News. Teen charged with killing parents also planned to assassinate Trump, FBI says. Nikita Kasap, 17, is accused of conspiracy to assassinate the president. Now, I wonder with those charges if they actually have real evidence he really was intending to go after Trump. Apparently, he killed his mother, 35-year-old Tatiana Kasap, and his stepfather, 51-year-old Donald Meyer. And he was accused of living with their corpses for 2 weeks. Apparently, he had a manifesto, and he had allegedly done it to take their money so he could use it for for financing his plan to assassinate the president. Now, this guy's not a leftist. They say that he was associated with some neo-Nazi cults and anti-government extremism. But I will tell you this as well. The right is not the faction in this country advocating for violence. Nope. This guy will be condemned easily by basically every single person on the right. When the left comes out and cheers for violence, it won't just inspire other leftists. It will inspire anyone.
He's definitely, he's a crazy kid, unfortunately, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you think that killing your parent, your mother and your stepfather are going to be a means for you to kill Donald Trump and thereby incite a race war, I think that would fall under detached from reality. But I don't know. I'm just kind of podcast. So he's
it's delusion.
Nuts.
It's a delusion of grandeur.
Delusion, yeah.
It's a classic delusion of grandeur. I can do something that will, and accelerationism, which is also something that you see a lot in these extremists.
I don't think that falls under right-wing ideology. If you have delusions like that, I don't think that you actually, sure, he's looking at, crazy Nazi stuff, but that's part of the delusion. That's not like that he has a coherent political philosophy that's right-leaning.
Well, it's clearly anti-Trump.
Yeah.
Right. There's no question about that.
Weird anti-Trump neo-Nazis. Well, he did condemn them totally,
Oh, but
he did.
There are very fine people on both sides of this argument, Tim. Come on now.
But not.
Right. Actually. No, but again, you have someone, what did it say? Telegram and TikTok. And, you can't sit there and say, like, we just found out all this information from the New York Times about ADHD for, decades. I'm sorry, I don't know if you had that up as a later topic, but, admitting that ADHD was totally, just totally over prescribed and
it makes men short.
And it makes men short.
Yep.
And it's, it's not that big of a deal. And yet so even if you don't have that, you still have TikTok and you still have Instagram, and you don't necessarily know what that does to developing minds.
We don't know at all what it does.
In terms of the dopamine, in terms of responses for anyone growing up. That's why I keep my kids off screens as much as possible.
The thing is, it's not until a guy is older does he start to understand height. And you've got a lot of people online there are subreddits for short guys, and they talk about how like it's not fair or whatever. There's the women who say 6'6", 6 feet tall, 6-pack, and 6 figures. According to the New York Times report, according to the report from the New York Times, it was making men an inch shorter than their peers without actually solving any of the underlying symptoms.
I mean, and again, this is all, by the way, this is all stuff that, you know, the crunchy, you know, Maha people have been saying for years.
Yeah.
You know, but you would be condemned as an RFK psychopath, sycophant, et cetera, kind of thing if you'd talked about it last week. But now that you've talked about it this week, it's like, well, according to the New York Times. So one of the questions that I have, though, is what does this mean politically, right? Do you think that it had anything? So we all know that the millennial generation had a lot of weird stuff happen to them, a lot of terrible stuff happen to them, a lot of just trauma associated with those formative years. But we don't really talk about the massive over-medication of millennials the way that we probably should, because I think that's clearly stunted a lot of the emotional and psychological development of millennials, just as much as, you know, Iraq and the global war on terror and 9/11 and the great financial crisis, global financial crisis, et cetera, that when you throw the massive Ritalin and Adderall on top of that, and you're like, gee, I wonder why they hate the system so much. I wonder why they have so much resentment. I wonder why they think they can't do anything. Probably because they've been told their entire lives by everyone that was put in a position of authority over them that something is wrong with you and you can't do anything and you need a pill, and you've been medicating yourself since you were a child.
Yeah. You know what I think is really crazy about this story? He was born in 2008. Right? We are old.
Wow.
It's just crazy to think that it doesn't take that much time
Got old boys.
grow a terrorist.
No, it doesn't. No.
That's the scary thing. That other guy from the other story,
So the homegrowns.
the homegrowns.
Homegrowns.
Trump's gonna lock them up, send them away.
Lock up the homegrowns.
They are apoplectic of us. But we'll get to that in a second. But with this other guy, he was 38. This Cody Balmer, I think his name was.
Yeah.
He had a family.
38 years old, wife and kids. And socialism doesn't work out well for socialists, as we've warned them repeatedly.
I don't understand how how someone can come to the conclusion that like all these bad things are happening. I have a family that I have to take care of. So the most positive course of action I can come up with is firebombing the governor's mansion.
I mean, most criminals aren't thinking.
Right.
I mean, you know, that's why they look, in the first place. But
I often ask myself when I see these stories about bank robbers and criminals, and I'm just thinking, like, why don't they just apply themselves to make money and get better jobs? I was like, oh, wait, right. If they had the capacity to do that, they wouldn't go and rob places. They'd literally be doing it. That's the problem. They can't. Their brains don't work.
yeah, I actually was in it's the one story I tell about this, I guess. So I was in Intel training at one point, and I was in like this course that's sort of like a joint course that's taught everywhere. And we actually had a retired NYPD homicide detective who was in teaching the course, and they gave us this scenario, and there was all these clues, and we had to sort of figure out where this woman had gone missing from an office in New York, and we had to figure it out. And it was just a scenario kind of thing, you know, how to analyze reports and things like that. I remember I came up with this like completely outlandish, like everything was combined, everything was working behind the scenes kind of scenario. And you know, I was maybe like, I don't know, like my 20s, and the detective was like, look, most criminals aren't that smart. If they were, they wouldn't choose crime in the first place.
Right.
And it was literally like she was just having an affair with her boss, and you know, it just kind of
look, there are dudes on the road that sell bottles of water.
Yeah.
I mean,
I knew a dude. Let me tell you, I knew a guy who would go to State in Madison, I think, in downtown Chicago, lay down against a light post, the street light post, with a empty Folgers can, and he'd go to sleep.
Yep.
And he'd wake up with $300 in it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And he'd buy heroin with it, which is unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate.
We're looking at this guy wrong. The Josh Shapiro guy, we're looking at him all wrong. He is he's truly found out that socialism is so bad for him that this is the only way he can afford a divorce.
Right. It's just, I think it comes down to, you know, taking accountability for yourself and your life and all the problems that you might have. And instead of taking the honest and often harder route, they perpetuate a lie, or they run with a lie because it's just simply easier than coming to terms with reality.
100%.
And they find themselves in these situations where they brood and end up acting on it.
Yeah, so there's two things at play. So the first is this, by the way, we talk about this in Unhumans. We call this the Ouroboros option playing out. This is where the snake eats its own tail, which is something that the left always does. The Mensheviks always eventually rise up. Because people forget that it wasn't actually the Bolsheviks that overthrew the Romanov family, the dynasty. It was this much wider, earlier February revolution, and they set up a republic for like 6 months in Russia. And then the Bolsheviks overthrew that republic and said, yeah, you guys are too moderate. We're just going to slaughter all you guys and do things this way. And then they eventually, of course, slaughtered the Romanov family in cold blood as well, and shall never be forgotten for that. But it's also a situation where when we talk about the pathology, it's like I described it like this, like a town, and in every town, you've got that one section of town that's a little bit nicer, or we all know, right? That's how towns work. Maybe it's on a hill, but it's usually gated. And everybody else in town kind of looks at them and is like, those yuppies, those up and comers, whatever. They think they're so much better than us, et cetera. You're always kind of griping about them. But some people say, hey, you know what? If you want to get a house like that, it's what you said. Just try to work harder, try to better yourself, and then maybe you can better your lot in life.
No.
And then someone else comes and says, hey, what if we go kill all those people and take their stuff?
So I've got a better solution. Better than all that.
Oh, better than that.
Yeah. So we from the airport today, we drove past Loudoun County. You're seeing these palatial mansions.
Oh, yeah, Loudoun County.
So
McLean, baby.
I'm waiting until next year when Trump's fired all of these people in the federal government that were affording these houses, and they can't afford to live there anymore, and the housing market's going to burst, and I'm just going to come in and buy those houses on the cheap. And that's how I'm going to get
well, yeah, the DC area works a little bit different than a fair, free market area. That's for sure. What are they? Well, it's basically like this. DC is an industry town. So when Trump comes into DC and says, "Hey, we're going to get rid of government," it's like that's the industry in this town. It'd be like going to LA and saying, "Hey guys, let's stop doing movies." Right? Like they would run you out of town. Even though, by the way, people realize that most of Hollywood has actually left Hollywood.
Yeah.
Movies aren't actually made there anymore. In though they just kind of like live in the, Hollywood is even Hollywood. There's like little pockets around.
Right.
But
They live there for the weather.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is the issue though with Doge and like the Pete Morocco guy who got fired from USAID, which he gets brought in to shut down USAID. He works to shut down USAID, shuts down most of it, and all of a sudden gets bounced like on a Friday, and everyone's like, "What's going on?"
I just thought of something before we go to the next segment. People should do is they should whenever they see a picture of Luigi Mangione, take it and alter it slightly to make him kind of ugly, like use one of those apps, but only by like 1 or 2%. That way, all the images that start circulating will make him look ugly, and the women will be like, "Oh, he's ugly. I don't want to support him anymore." I'm only half kidding, by the way.
Just put a red hat on him with an M, and he's
By the way, that's a members only subject for why women support attractive murderers but not unattractive murderers.
Indeed, we'll get to that in a second. But let's jump to the story from Politico. El Salvador won't return wrongly deported Maryland man? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. According to the corporate press, an innocent man from Maryland was deported to a prison. Okay, here's the real story. There was a guy who entered the country illegally. That's what the courts have determined. He was a member of MS-13 according to one court and an appellate court. He had an order for removal from this country. There was a temporary stay put on deportation related to fears he would face harm if he returned to El Salvador. Donald Trump's administration upheld the deportation order and said it was an administrative error, the oversight on the previous stay. However, he was now outside of the U.S. jurisdiction, and as a citizen of El Salvador, that's El Salvador's problem. A district court ordered the president to return to the United States a member of MS-13, illegal immigrant, from the jurisdiction of a foreign country. Something that not only Trump could not do if he tried, but he doesn't have the authority to force a foreign government to give up its citizens. He can pressure them and try. We get that. But they don't have the authority to order. So while the Supreme Court ruled Trump must facilitate the return of this man if El Salvador releases him, they said these courts can't order the president to engage in foreign policy negotiations. So now what ends up happening is Nayib Bukele, who visited the president, he's the president of El Salvador, he visited Trump, said, I'm not going to, what do you want me to do? Smuggle this guy back into the U.S. as a terrorist? And they said, no, but you can release him. And he says, we don't take kindly, like, we don't want to release terrorists from our prisons onto our own streets. He's an El Salvadoran man. We're not releasing a known terrorist. He said, we just went from the murder capital of the world to the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you're trying to reverse that? It's never going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Now look at the reaction on Reddit from these. This is default. This is just default Reddit, okay? You go to reddit.com, you go to news, and what do you see? Top comment. So let me get this straight. These people committed no crimes. They were illegally detained and removed from the country against their will. And they're being held in a foreign prison indefinitely with no due process. And yet they still frame it as deportation and not kidnapping and human trafficking.
No crime.
Let's pause real quick. The only crime committed is illegal entry into the country, for which the penalty is deportation. Now, they were illegally detained. Incorrect. That was not an illegal detainment. You can argue that it wasn't an illegal, but they violated a court order through his deportation. But they're not being held in a foreign prison. The man is El Salvadoran. He's being held in his own prison. Mm-hmm. They want him back. Look at this. So kidnapping it is then. Either they don't want anyone reporting on the conditions of the prison or he's already dead. This is an effing problem. These are the only few logical conclusions. Trump told him to say this to subvert the decision of the courts. He is dead. They don't actually know where he is. Visits the U.S. We cannot guarantee you won't be deported to a prison in El Salvador by mistake. Why is it that all of these people, it's supposed to be politically neutral, but they omit the key details of what actually happened here?
So I think that, and can you scroll down a little bit? I want to see how many upvotes the main post has. 37,000. Okay, so this is what people need to start understanding better. That when we talk about the ascendance of the unhumans, that unhuman activity is on the rise. This is where it starts. It starts with people just willfully accepting lies about cases and then reacting to it, and then taking that and then running with it to its logical course. We have to fight back. And what you need to understand is that that's 37,000 people just on this one subreddit. There are millions of people who have this, what we call the fried mental model of the world, where they just still sit there and regurgitate everything the NPR tells them, the Facebook tells them, the Reddit tells them, whatever the NPR sales narrative is, they will immediately regurgitate it. And these people, by the way, live around you. They're in your schools, probably controlling your schools and libraries, by the way. And it's a huge problem.
Look at this comment. Do you want to read that one, Phil?
Leaving a legal resident of the U.S. to rot in a foreign prison should make every single member of Congress vote to impeach him. The fact they are silent and the fact Trump revels in sending people to a foreign prison will not be remembered kindly. His legacy is long gone.
He didn't send an American citizen to a foreign prison. He didn't send a man to a foreign prison.
He said a legal resident. So, I mean, that
Oh, right. This guy was not a legal resident.
Right.
He was here illegally with a stay over, I guess, safety concerns. And the Trump administration argues they actually did have the authority to deport him, and it wasn't a mistake. But this guy's not going to a foreign prison. He went home. He went home. Could you imagine a guy breaks into your house, steals a bunch of your stuff, eats all your food, and then he's holding a bunch of your gold and rare earths that you store in your house that you've exported from China at the last minute, imported, and then you go, hey,
I have so many rare earths in my mud room.
And then you go, buddy, hey, you're gonna pay the penalty. I'm gonna give you a ride home. Come on, my van's right here. Hop in. We'll drive you home. No, my wife's gonna be mean to me. It's okay. I'll give you a ride home.
So, when we say make America great again, I really come back to this point of, you guys remember when the ACLU, which if you don't know what that acronym is, American Civil Liberties Union. Actually,
Anti-Civil Liberties Union now.
Well, that's what it is now. But it used to actually stand for protecting our civil liberties. Now they spend so much time protecting and defending these illegal immigrants or people who aren't actually deserving of those civil liberties. It is insane to me. And they're fighting so hard to get this guy back. Here's the conversation. And I laid this out a week and a half ago before this guy came and El Salvador came and said, no, we're not doing that. It was quite literally, okay, Donald Trump must facilitate. Here's the conversation. Hey, yeah, we're going to need that guy back. And El Salvador's like, what, our citizen? Yeah, that guy. Nope, not going to happen. Well, shit, I tried.
Not just that. It's like, if there was a crime the man committed whose penalty was answering for the murder of somebody, and we wanted to extradite him, saying, you can't protect this man, he murdered some. No. This is a guy whose crime was he's a gang member who entered illegally, for which the penalty is go home.
So
he was sent home. By what logic are we going to extradite him back here?
So, and here's the crazy part. So the day before the Supreme Court announcement came down saying, hey, 9-0, got to get him back, Pam Bondi and I can't remember who else did a conference saying, hey, we're dropping all these charges. It's like they knew that Supreme Court decision was coming as it was supposed to be. And they said, we're going to drop these charges because we can't say we have to bring you back to get your due process for the crimes that you allegedly committed. We're not charging you with any crimes.
Yeah.
The only crime you have is being here illegally.
The Supreme Court said not that they said Trump can't be compelled to have a foreign government give up one of their own citizens. They said in the event that El Salvador does release this man, Trump must provide the plane for him to come back. Mm-hmm. So if the guy is freed and then says, I would like to come to America, Trump's supposed to fly him back. So Nayib Bukele just goes, nah, he's a criminal. He ain't going nowhere.
Perfect.
I mean, thankfully, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what people need to understand, though, is that the Maryland Man hoax, and that's what we're calling it, it's the Maryland Man hoax. This is a disinformation operation that's being run, and Reddit, of course, is a huge channel for disinformation that's being run against President Trump. Obviously, they're trying to break up his relationship with Bukele. They're trying to use Bukele as someone who's, by the way, beaten these people at every single one of their games, including the judges and including the courts down there, including the liberal media. But now they're terrified of Trump actually using these tactics in the United States, not just for illegals, by the way, but for hardened criminals, murderers, and the rest of actually locking up gangs and throwing people away and throwing away the key. And so in order to do that, you've got to run a sort of low level. We're starting to see our versions of the color revolution playbook be used against Trump. And one of the key elements of the color revolution playbook is the locking up of nonviolent citizens. So this is always something they use. This is, by the way, something they accused of Gaddafi of doing. This is something they accused across the Middle East when they were knocking off regimes. They would say, you're locking up people, you're going against your own people, you're attacking your own people. They said it about, you think of autocrat after autocrat, dictator after dictator, but now you're using that same narrative. He's attacking his own people. They know that they're lying. They don't care that they're lying. They know that we are telling the truth. The thing is, they're going to run the operation anyway because they can still reach the people on Reddit, the people on NPR, the people on Facebook, which, by the way, Mark Zuckerberg has done nothing to clean up. And they'll use that to try to erode support away from Trump as much as possible.
Well, we do have this story we'll get to in a little bit with Meta facing off on antitrust. So Zuckerberg's begging the White House to back off. Yeah, well, Zuckerberg, he's not backing off the censorship.
Nope.
We still deal with it every single day. He's done nothing about this. Now, granted, they got rid of the fact-checking thing, but, we'll see. What I will say about Nayib Bukele is the corporate press in the United States claimed that he was arresting and jailing innocent people and doing all these awful things. And you know what my response to that is? Abraham Lincoln. And then thank you and have a nice day. Nayib Bukele had a country that was overrun by various gangs that did whatever they wanted. So many people in Central and Central America and South America have tried to combat these narco gangs, these cartels, and they die. In Mexico, mayors are killed by the cartels if they dare defy them. El Salvador was brutal, one of the highest rates of murder in the world. He says it's the murder capital of the world. Well, it's disputed. Maybe Honduras, actually, or maybe Venezuela, depending on how you're counting the murders, but still one of the worst. He gets in and he says, this is war against criminal, evil, rapists, child traffickers, drug dealers, and we're going to save this country. And so we lament when in times of conflict and great war, like his country was dealing with, that the innocent do get swept up in these things. But everybody in this country, when asked if you said, was Abraham Lincoln a good president, you get something like 95% say he was a great president. When people are asked who is the greatest American president, some 83% say Abraham Lincoln. And what did he do? He arrested politicians who disagreed with him. He threatened to arrest a sitting Supreme Court justice for disagreeing with him. He set up a suspension of habeas corpus from Pennsylvania to D.C. to arrest anybody he wanted for any reason. And their argument was, we need to be able to move from Pennsylvania to D.C. without question and without threat or risk, because
which, ironically,
Maryland was a slave state.
I was going to say, which ironically, it would have covered a lot of Maryland men.
Yeah. Indeed.
Just like Maryland, just like this Maryland
man. And so, is anybody going to come out and be like, yay, we love that Abraham Lincoln was arresting random people without charge or trial? No, of course not. But he was a man at war seeking to preserve the Union. And with Nayib Bukele, and to a great degree with Trump, you have what I describe as extenuating circumstance in a wartime president. It's not an idea I've come up with. I think Will Chamberlain's been talking about this for like 7 or 8 years, that you have a deep state that is willing to imprison, jail, or in some respects, you have components that want to assassinate Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He needs to use what powers he can, constitutionally, I argue, but to the extent that he can, to preserve this nation. Now, I don't see Trump doing anything as egregious as Abraham Lincoln did. He's deporting people under the Alien Enemies Act. It's a law. He's allowed to do it. The Supreme Court said he's allowed to do it. Abraham Lincoln was like, habeas corpus, nah, you can't do that. He did it anyway.
So
Nayib Bukele arrested overwhelmingly all gang members and criminals, and we don't know the extent to which innocent people may have been wrapped up, and we lament that if that's the case. But what Nayib Bukele did in transforming El Salvador is historic, and it's a story of legend, of a man who came in, resisted the cartels, survived the cartels, rebuilt his nation, made it one of the safest, if not the safest, in the Western Hemisphere. Now you've got people of wealth flocking to El Salvador because he's fixed it and made it into a beach paradise.
Surf City and Surf City 2.
Did you hear what he said when they brought this up in the White House today? What Bukele said?
A couple of it, but
the line that I love was he reframed the entire thing, and he said, "You want to talk about how many people we've incarcerated, and yet you never talk about how many people we liberated."
It was something like,
perfect.
You say that we incarcerated thousands. I say we liberated millions.
We liberated millions,
and he's right.
And it's exactly right. You can't have a functioning society if you allow these homicidal maniacs to roam free, to roam out of prisons. That's why we have prisons in the first place. There are other ways to deal with crime, by the way, but a homicidal maniac, a psychopath, a gang, a narco gang, etc., you can't allow them out. And so you have to deal with them some way to allow for freedom, the viability of families, the raising of children. This is how societies continue. This is how you get your birth rates back up, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into that. But the point being is, if you don't allow for your basic function of civilization to continue because unhumans are in control of your country, then guess what? You will lose your country, which is the situation that El Salvador was in. And it's also why I believe Bukele won. It's like the largest presidential victory in history.
I mean, so the story I like to tell is I was playing poker at National Harbor in D.C. That's the casino. Guy sitting to my left was, everybody was talking. He mentioned that someone brought up Trump and people were talking about it. People were pretty chill because poker players tend to be more right-leaning. Not all of them. And dude brought up, he was from El Salvador. And then I was like, oh, really? Why'd your family come here? He was like, it was really bad. It was crime. And then I was like, oh, yeah. How do you feel about Bukele? And he goes, we're moving back. And I'm like, you're moving back to El Salvador? And he's like, it's really nice now. Yeah, we want to go back. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Congratulations, sir. I'm glad you've gotten your country back, and I'm glad you have a leader like Nayib. I'm excited to see what he does. Plus, you got Max and Stacy down there, Bitcoin revolutionaries, and El Salvador, of course, is the land of Bitcoin.
So, what I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing through all this, guys, is Donald Trump, depending on who you ask, could be the greatest president of your lifetime or the worst president of your lifetime. But what I'm hearing through this is he's not going far enough. He needs to take that next step and be that real dictator everyone wants him to be, and we can really have America back.
I don't know that he needs to be a dictator. My point is the powers of the Constitution afford him the ability to go after Adam Schiff and any J6 member who lied, manipulated witnesses, or committed crimes. These lawyers at the DOJ who they're just firing, taking a light approach. And, I do trust him. A lot of people got mad at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino because they appointed that guy, what's his name, Jensen?
Jensen.
Yeah. You know about this story? And that he had said disparaging things about J6ers, and they're like, why is this guy staying on? And I say, guys, there's no one I trust more on this than Dan Bongino. And with all due respect to Kash Patel, who I think is also great, Dan is a bull. I cannot see that guy going back on his word or betraying the people who stood by him and helped him and who he wants to serve. So I have concerns, but for the most part, I'm like, let him cook, man.
I have nothing but respect for Kash and Dan for sure. And at the same time, though, I can also understand why people are asking questions.
Agreed.
After everything that we've seen come out of the FBI over the last decade, Tucker's got a huge interview with this guy, Kurt Weldon, by the way, who, funny enough, so they talk about something that happened on his campaign in 2006 that was actually the very first campaign I ever interned on, so this is like part of the Poso origin story or whatever, that Tucker has the guy on that I worked for. And the campaign got raided like a month before the election. And it is 2006 when Mueller was still FBI director. And this was a time where, by the way, nobody was talking about this yet. Guess what they claimed that he was involved with? Russia.
Oh, wow.
20 years ago, he was an agent of Russia and his daughter, et cetera. And it's like, and by the way, all of this was because he was ringing the bell on 9/11 stuff that the government knew prior to the attacks. And suddenly the FBI came in and destroyed his entire career. Kurt Weldon. And yeah, that's kind of, I got my start.
Let's jump to this next story from MSN. Caught on hot mic. What did Trump tell Bukele about homegrowns? So it's everyone's favorite Aaron Rupar, and he says Trump to Bukele, quote, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns, you got to build about 5 more places. It's not big enough. Now, those that are not familiar with Aaron Rupar, there is a technique in journalism called Ruparing. And that means you take a story and cut it out of context and falsely frame what actually happened.
Wait, Tim, are you making this up, or can I find this on the internet somewhere?
Indeed you can. Should I pull it up?
Where could that be?
Yeah.
Urban Dictionary?
Urban Dictionary, but that only tells the truth, Tim.
Let's see. To Rupar. Here we go. Yep. We got it from Urban Dictionary. I didn't make it up. March of 2021. To lie with impunity, a brazen statement with a focus on misleading, usually with the intention of a predetermined outcome. To purposely mislead, to intentionally and grossly mischaracterize a statement and or video. Indeed, as Aaron Rupar publishes this clip, Trump to Bukele, homegrowns are next. I will tell you this. Donald Trump has stated publicly he'd like to send the worst of the worst from America to this prison in El Salvador. And I will tell you, my opinion is absolutely not. American citizens go through American courts, and we have Guantanamo Bay for the worst of the worst. We don't need El Salvador. That being said, in this clip, it looks like Trump is joking, and you don't really even know what he's saying because you can't make it out. Here's the clip. It's 30 seconds long.
Demanded the people wanted to change everything, and they wanted to. He demanded, they love you, they love what you do. You know, I'm not your supporter. I want him to do, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns, you got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right? It's not big enough. No, yeah. Come on. So this is a much different office than you're.
So I'm going to tell you, I don't know for sure. Trump has stated before he wants the worst of the worst in America to be sent to this prison. It seems like he was. I almost kind of feel like there was a news cycle where they were attacking Trump, saying he wants to send Americans to these prisons, and that the reason everybody in the room laughs is because he was making a comment on this. I don't trust that Aaron Rupar put out only 30 seconds of this. They called it hot mic. He's standing in front of a bunch of reporters, and he turns and says, I said the homegrowns are next. He's got to build more. Everyone laughs.
Yeah,
so I don't know. What do you guys think?
He's definitely known for literally turning to the reporters in the room when he's making jokes like that. So I don't think that he's being serious at all here. He makes eye contact basically with the reporters in the room.
But here's the real question for everybody. When Trump says the homegrowns are next, and we're talking about gang members, cartel murderers, child traffickers. What is the argument that with due process, a conviction, Donald Trump can't send a child trafficker to a prison in a foreign country?
Well, I suppose legally just devil's advocate, I suppose legally speaking, that would be releasing him to another government's custody. So he wouldn't actually be in our custody at that point. And so you'd have all sorts of legal issues there, because then I'm sure the Supreme Court would come in and say, well, you're depriving them all sorts of rights.
Or arguably releasing them.
Because, yeah, in a sense, but, you're depriving them a right to appeal, right to attorney, all those things.
Indeed. Does Guantanamo Bay have all of those functions under the U.S. governance?
Yes, it does.
Indeed.
So then, Guantanamo Bay has, and I can say this as a source, I lived there for, and served there for almost a year.
They got McDonald's and stuff too. It's
sure do have a McDonald's. They had a Subway. We had a bowling alley on Fridays and Saturdays. They did laser light bowling.
Wow.
2 movie theaters, by the way. I worked in the movie theater. It was pretty cool.
Waterboarding at Guantanamo Bay sounds really fun until you learn what it means. I didn't make up the joke. It's somebody else.
Rush Limbaugh used to have the T-shirts that said "Club Gitmo, your tropical retreat from the stress of jihad."
So I look at this and I just say to Trump,
they have lawyers and trials and all of it.
For the homegrown extremist criminals, we have Guantanamo Bay, and I don't know why we would need to use El Salvador for this. I would not want to see that happen.
Which, by the way, the actual facility of I think it's Camp 6 at Guantanamo is based on the same schematics as the Supermax in Colorado. So it is almost a 1-to-1. At least size. I don't know if size-wise it's exactly the same, but it's the same structure that you would get in a federal correctional institute.
What if we offered a choice to capital offenders, death row or El Salvador?
See, here's my thing, right? Here's my thing. Wait, capital offenders, you mean like so straight up, you will be killed
if you
right?
stay.
So death sentence.
Yep. Or we can send you to El Salvador.
No,
I imagine they would mostly take El Salvador.
No, I'm still for the death sentence, that guys.
Yeah.
I think they would. I've changed my position on the death penalty because I was watching a protest over the firing squads in South Carolina. And I would say, not that I've changed my position to be in favor of the death penalty, but that I consider the will of others. I weigh that to what I believe and think it is fair, that I am not the arbiter of society. So what I would request is, in exchange for the death penalty, we have a system in which, following a conviction, putting someone on death row, the prosecutors and the investigators themselves, the police, will face an investigation from an independent agency outside the state or federal. And if it's federal, there'd have to be some way to do this, to investigate any malfeasance. That is, there are certain politicians who I will remain unnamed for, let's just call it community guideline reasons, who are known to have withheld evidence that would have exonerated death row inmates. That is my problem largely with the death penalty. That being said, if we had a safety net that would make sure that those criminals that are trying to get the state to murder people for whatever insane reason are held to account, then I'm much more willing to accept the death penalty existing. Despite the fact that I still fear innocent people being wrongly convicted, it's a compromise in that, I saw a woman holding up a sign that said, "Don't kill in my name." And the first thing I thought was, they're not. They acknowledge that you are not okay with this. But the will of the state and the voters is that they don't want these offenders who have been duly convicted to continue living as they're a threat to society. And I can respect that argument from everyone I had with it. My concern is still malfeasance in government. So I say, have an investigation to ensure that there is no malfeasance and that certain prosecutors from California can't withhold evidence that would result in innocent people dying.
We one of the things that we also brought up, though, is the Lee Kuan Yew option. And so this, of course, is the guy who cleaned up Singapore, which was, by the way, I wouldn't say it was a similar situation to El Salvador, but bears some similarities. It's small. It's like a city, sort of a nation state, city-state. And he introduced, famously, flogging. So rather than mass incarceration, right? No, think about it, though, right? So you're talking about the option. Would you pick this or that?
Yeah.
So rather than this or that, what if instead look, think about it, right? Hey, you're facing 20 years for this crime. So non-capital crimes, let's say, okay, you're facing 20 years for this crime. What are you going to take? 20 years or 20 lashes?
Well, I mean, bro, it would be 20 years is a serious offense. You get way more than 20 lashes for that.
Well, it could be 100 lashes for 20
Right,
years.
right.
But you get what I'm saying in terms of the thought.
Everyone takes the lashes.
Everyone takes the lashes.
Yeah. And then you're scarred for life. But I agree with that.
But it works for Singapore.
The reason why I agree with this is it's not a violation of cruel and unusual punishment if they're given a choice.
Yep.
We will give you standard incarceration, but there's an alternative. And we do alternatives all the time. We do work release. So why, and they do, you know, if you fight fires, okay. So why don't we offer up
Russia is doing, frontline
1 year in prison, 1 year in prison, or 1 month in the stockade?
What if option 3?
A month in the stockade.
Oof. A year in prison is a long time to lose.
Even a month in the stockade, that's rough. Yeah.
Well,
Outside
I
in
mean,
the elements.
Okay, right,
You
okay.
get to go in at night.
So, my assumption on the stockade is
You'll probably die of exposure if you're.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So you can go to the stockade for a short amount of time, a week or two or something. But my point is there will be people making sure you don't die, obviously. It's just you're in public, everyone can see you, you are shamed, and you suffer for a certain period of time, but you have a choice.
This is why we had stockades. This is why, I mean, you think about it, it's like people are so, which by the way, people get, mass incarceration. No, mass incarceration was originally part of the original small p progressive movement. The idea was that you would have, that rather than have public floggings and public executions and stockades, then you would go to mass incarceration. So, and then suddenly progressives say, oh, this is so much better. This is so much more wonderful. And now they're all upset about the mass incarceration.
Yeah.
So for those that are saying, wait, what's a stockade? It's this. You've seen it.
Yeah. Phil, show the people.
You've got they just hold you in the woods.
Stockade, yeah.
Yeah. So you're held in position, and it's for a certain period of time. Maybe what I mean to say is
it's painful, but it's also humiliating, and that's the point.
Right. So obviously a month, probably too long, you'd probably die. So it'd be like a week or something because
military stockade would hold soldiers for days to weeks pending trial.
Wow.
For minor offenses, drunkenness or petty theft, you'd be a few hours to a couple days.
I think we save a lot of money. I think we save a lot of money.
I'm just saying, guys, there's other options, okay? There's other options.
There is. Yeah, I think when Trump's talking about homegrowns, if he's talking about capital offenses that would result in the death of an individual, what are the leftists angry about? Well, in their mind, Trump is saying Mahmoud Khalil. In their mind, Trump is having some like little old lady going, "You're a tyrant," getting sent to El Salvador. No. What Trump is talking about, he said the worst of the worst. We're talking about capital offenders, child traffickers, drug dealers, cartels, etc. The point he was making is that there are cartel members in this country that were born in this country, and they work and serve the cartels that are foreign to this country. Personally, I say, well, Guantanamo is good enough. I don't want to open the door to that. It's a slippery slope. But that being said, it's not a violation of the 8th Amendment to offer choices. I don't see how that's cruel and unusual at all. No. You can go to prison like normal. Everybody goes there. It'll give you an option.
I would say, though, if you are worried about price, the cost of incarcerating someone at Guantanamo is very exorbitant compared to within the confines of the mainland.
Yeah, if there's a situation where Trump feels the individual is so egregious and so violent that they're not getting the death penalty for whatever reason, maybe they have information or something, I don't know, it makes sense to pay the premium for Guantanamo for whatever strategic military or intel purposes we would need for that. That's why I believe it exists. Otherwise, I don't know why Trump would want to send anybody anywhere. Is it because it's cheaper in El Salvador?
Well, for El Salvador, yeah, because these are illegals to begin with, so it makes sense to send them there rather than send them to Gitmo. If we send them to Gitmo, we have to pay for them. Well, a lot of the reason for having Bukele do this and why it's such a smart idea, it's even smarter than sending them to Gitmo, and I'd say this is a guy who is supportive of Gitmo, and there's so many conspiracy theories and myths about that place, I swear. The guys who have been released, they just all lie. They all just straight up and lie. The guy went on Jordan Peterson, he's like, oh, I was tortured every day. Like, no, you weren't, dude. I was there. It's we're not bearing the cost. Bukele is actually paying for the United States.
Right.
We're saving the money from having to do this. It's a great business deal from Trump's perspective. We got
a couple more segments I want to try and get in. So before we jump to the ADHD one, I just want to mention, as we have it in this segment, the law of self-defense, Branca says, I'm with Jack Poso on the lashes if the victim gets to deliver the lashes.
Ooh, I like that. I love that.
Let's jump to the story from the New York Times.
Or a victim's family member.
Indeed.
given the situation.
The New York Times is basically saying that ADHD was a scam. They say, have we been thinking about ADHD all wrong? With diagnoses at a record high, some experts have begun to question our assumptions about the condition and how to treat it. Except South Park questioned it a long time ago, where they played a video and the doctor was like, our new treatment for ADHD is non-medical, non-invasive. Simply approach the child, and then he walks up to the kid and he slams the table and says, sit down and study. And the kid just gets right to it and starts reading, and the other kids are shaking. And he goes, once the treatment is administered to one child, the others fall in line as well. So the crazy thing about this that I think needs to be brought up right away, check this out. They say there was another distressing result they noticed in their data, a physiological one. The children who took Ritalin for an extended period grew less quickly than the non-medicated children did. By the end of those 36 months, subjects who had consistently taken stimulant medication were on average more than an inch shorter than the ones who had never received medication. Many of the scientists in the MTA group assumed this height suppression in childhood would be temporary, that the shorter children would catch up during adolescence. But when data was collected again 9 years after the initial experiment, the height gap remained. In 2017, Swanson and the MTA group published another follow-up, this time tracking the subjects until age 25. The ones who had consistently taken stimulant medication remained about an inch shorter than their peers. Their ADHD symptoms, meanwhile, were no better than those who had stopped taking the medication or who never even started. Excuse me, that is to say, men out there, everybody, think about this. The New York Times says when they put you on that ADHD medication, you'll be short. You'll be an inch or more shorter than you would have been. I think that if a lot of these men knew that being put on this drug would do this to them in their adulthood, they would say absolutely not. More importantly, I think most people are starting to realize when you take young men who are spunky and full of energy and want to run around like kids, you put them in a room and say, sit down and shut up, and they're sitting there shaking. It is not an illness. It is called being male. So I visited some family friends, my wife's friends, and they had a son and a daughter, and they were very close in age. And they said, you know what's really funny? One day, the boy started running around smashing things, and the girl started running around taking them and trying to protect them. And we didn't teach them to do this. They just did. And yes, boys and girls are different. Men and women are different.
They are.
So when they start drugging children en masse, and I think it's like, what, a fifth of kids are getting these drugs? It's not because the kids, anything's wrong with them.
I think the data point that I saw in the article earlier was 23% of 17-year-olds currently, which is 1 in 4. 1 in 4.
Yep, 23% of 17-year-olds. Look at this. 15.5% of American adolescents, 21% of 14-year-old boys, and 23% of 17-year-old boys. 7 million American children have received an ADHD diagnosis, up from 6 million in 2016.
And what happens between 14 and 17? High school. So that's when you get hit with the high school teachers. So the 17-year-olds have a higher rate because they've spent more time in high school and had a high school teacher say, "Oh, this kid needs a prescription." It's such a scam, man. It's so bad.
I wonder how much.
You know what's really fascinating is that school sucks, and everyone knows it sucks. Kids have been saying school sucks forever, and parents don't listen. And there is something functionally wrong with this country that children every day say, I hate this.
Well,
Yeah.
This is not what human life is supposed to be. We're supposed to be working towards goals. Go back 200 years. The kids would wake up early and work with their parents. And sure, kids would be like, oh, I want to go hang out with my friends and things like this. But you weren't supposed to hate where you were at all hours of the day to the point where you get bullying and you get shootings and you get other nonsense. These schools are being run miserably, and that is why we must abolish the Department of Education.
Well, among other
Absolutely.
things. But look, I mean, look, there's evidence that, or the way that schools are designed is to train kids for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Most kids are not going to get out of school and go and work in a factory, and that was kind of the design.
But that's the scheduling structure with the bells ringing and all that.
Yeah.
Schools today are just miserable places to be where kids are not, typically the teachers don't like you.
Yeah, they're a vestige of the past. That's why we should get rid of them.
Well, I mean, I don't even think they were functional when they were implemented as means of training kids to work in factories. The fact of the matter is, kids always learn from their parents and their communities. They had neighbors. The son would work with the dad from a young age and learn the dad's craft. And the daughter would work with the mother and learn the mother's craft. And now what we've created is we give our children off to the state to put them in an institutionalized learning facility where the kids don't actually learn and they're miserable. And then the teachers start telling those kids, start lying to their parents. This whole thing is broken. And when young men who are disagreeable say, I don't like this place, they go, he needs drugs. It is a nightmare dystopia happening before our very eyes, and it's time to put an end to it.
There's more distractions today than there was a decade ago as well. Cell phones in the classroom, all sorts of things that are targeted at the teen generation as far as marketing. And I think that the pharmaceutical companies' business practice of creating forever customers and giving kickbacks to physicians and doctors that prescribe these medications in the first place kind of plays hand in hand with perhaps these data points we're looking at.
My child is not going to go on the internet until she's 50.
That's a solid plan. Like Steve Jobs was famous for not allowing his kids any technology.
Yep.
None. I can make the argument that the Ritalin generation is the reason we have smartphones, the reason we have tablets, and the reason we have social media in the form that they are. Because parents saw how Ritalin was affecting their children. Like, nah, we're creating zombies. We can't do this. We need a different way to control our children and pacify them. So guess what? Social media comes along. And guess what? Here's your new babysitter. I don't have to put you in front of a TV anymore. I can just put a tablet in your hand and I can still watch the TV shows that I cared about.
Yeah, I say nah, none of that. My kid is not going to have any tablets or phones. I will get a computer with no internet so she can learn basic computer stuff. We will have a touch screen. We will have tablets, but no internet. No internet. None. No. We're going to get, she's going to use a 1994 Dell PC with a Pentium 2 processor, and it's going to have Math Blaster and Number Muncher on it and Oregon Trail. And she's going to play the games I play.
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Go with
The original.
You died of dysentery.
Oregon Trail.
Does anyone remember Deep Cut Prairie Dog Hunter?
Yes.
No, what is that?
Yeah. Is that a
Prairie
yes?
Dog Hunter?
Prairie Dog
Wait,
Hunter,
maybe.
yeah. Because it had the most epic sound effects ever. You would shoot the prairie dog and it would be like, ee!
That came on the Apple IIe along with Oregon Trail. Yes.
It was on. I was never an Apple guy, but I had Jetpack. I had a bunch of those games.
Jetpack.
Jetpack was awesome.
Yes,
you
so-
can make your own levels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want that kind of stuff for my kid where I want some of the newer things, but I don't trust a lot of this modern stuff. You know, these modern kids shows are horrifying and they're not educational.
But you know what
Mr. Rogers.
You know what it is? It's because of the frame rates. It's with frame rates and it's the skipping of content. So the way that scenes switch over and over and over. And that's one thing, you know, I'll just chill it for a second. But like the Brave Books guys, they have a new Brave Plus that's out right now. And you know, Kirk Cameron was doing the whole Iggy and Mr. Kirk thing. So they've also launched, it's on Roku and smart TVs, a show or a channel that you can just go and download for free where you get Iggy and Kirk and you get like some of it for free and then you can buy the rest of it. But they've also brought back a lot of those like 90s cartoons and they specifically track it to make sure it doesn't have those fast scene skips that would lock someone into this like ADHD sort of state the way that the new stuff does. And they were walking me through it the other day. I was like, that's actually fascinating because I know that when my kids, and we've like banned all that stuff from my house, I didn't realize that before I had kids. I was like, what? Why is this like show like a Paw Patrol kind of show? Content wise is fine. Like I know there's a couple woke episodes.
Wait. Paw Patrol?
Most of Paw
Is that
Patrol,
where the animals speak English like people? My child will not be watching any of that furry garbage. That is furry indoctrinating content, and my child will not watch it. I told my wife, no Bambi. She's like, but Bambi is good. No Bambi.
What about Winnie the Pooh?
No.
Okay, but only the live action Snow White.
What about Fraggle Rock?
None. No, I hate Muppets.
Darn those Fraggles.
We're gonna raise her like it's the 1800s, and we're gonna convince her technology doesn't exist.
Oh, so you want to go back?
I'm kidding, by the way.
You want to go back? You want to go back before Schoolhouse Rock, and I think Schoolhouse Rock should absolutely be taught in every home.
The only
We're gonna tell the
raise
year
your
is
hand, raise your hand.
1836.
the only
Who learned
anthropomorph-
more from Schoolhouse Rock than they did from school about how government actually works?
The only
I'm just saying.
anthropomorphized things that should be allowed are bills.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Explain to the child how bills become law, and that's acceptable.
Wasn't
She's
there?
gonna do chores on the farm. She's gonna take care of the chickens. We're gonna get a garden going. We're gonna get a mini cow, and she's gonna do work.
Wasn't there a Simpsons episode where they did, or Simpsons or South Park, I forget, and they did a parody of Schoolhouse Rock? They're like, "Here's how it really works." You're like, "I'm a bill. I'm a lobbyist."
Simpsons.
Absolutely.
Oh, Simpsons, yeah.
All right,
he comes in with like a bunch of money, and he's like,
Let's jump to the story to piss everybody off from the post-millennial. Carmelo Anthony's bond
Here we
reduced
go.
to $250,000 will be placed on house arrest.
and there's video of him being released from prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he walked out.
The post-millennial says murder suspect in the death of Austin Metcalf Carmelo Anthony has been placed on house arrest after his bond was lowered from $1 million to $250,000.
Totally insane.
He appeared in court on Monday morning, where his attorneys asked for the bond reduction. Anthony had been charged with murder in the death of Metcalf after he reportedly stabbed the Texas teen in the heart while at a track meet earlier this month after an altercation between the two over a seat. Anthony has claimed self-defense in the case, police have reported. Both of Anthony's parents have testified at the court's bond reduction hearing. The family was able to raise over $400,000 with the Give, Send, Go fundraiser, meaning that they can make the bond. Anthony will have to speak to the bailiff every Friday and is not allowed on social media. He will also be required to wear an ankle monitor. Now, the argument from Anthony's family was they actually don't have any of the Give, Send, Go money, which I don't know if this is true. I heard Give, Send, Go holds the money pending conviction or something like that, which I'm not sure that's actually the case. Someone made that argument. I don't know that that's true. The co-founder of Give, Send, Go has been adamant that they allow anybody to raise money for a legal defense. Otherwise, they'd be hypocrites, despite the fact
When they did all the J6 guys.
they did the J6 guys. They did Daniel Penny. I believe they did Perry as well, and Kyle Rittenhouse. And the co-founder is getting attacked mercilessly, being called evil, demonic, anti-Christian, because there's a demand that they take it down, take the money, seize it. Some have said give it to the Metcalf family instead, or they will boycott the platform. But
I mean, I do think. I'll put it this way. I know Jacob, and I think in this country you should be afforded the right to a legal defense. And if Give, Send, Go, if Give, Send, Go gets taken down, guys, where else are we going to go for platforms like this that don't do cancellation?
But there's two interesting developments. The one is that Carmelo Anthony's legal team quit and was replaced by a nonprofit that I'm not sure.
Did they quit or did he trade up?
I think he traded up.
Yeah.
Because this group is now like a BLM associated nonprofit group. I'm not entirely sure, but I've seen that be reported. And there is video that the police have. Now, the question is, where did the video come from? Because there's a huge list of witnesses here.
Well, it's a teen track meet. You imagine.
Right. And it was more than two schools that were there. It was a ton of schools, 4 or 5 at least. And so they've got video footage so to put it simply, this will be interesting to see what happens. But many people are questioning why the video footage wasn't released. That is, if this was self-defense, wouldn't the defense do everything in their power to get the video footage released that shows that?
You'd think.
The defense team, yes.
Right.
Right, yeah.
The defense would be coming out right now giving statements saying, we want that footage released. And they're not doing that.
I haven't heard that at all. And
Right.
this is something where, look, everyone's been back and forth. To me, I don't see any evidence of a self-defense argument here. I mean, sure, he can make the claim. I just don't see evidence for it being successful at trial. But sure, any piece of video evidence. Look, the thing that I ask for is, what's the dog that's not barking? And so teenagers, we just talked about how, teenagers are always on their cell phones. They're always looking for the next piece of content. They're sort of trained to look for content and trained by the algorithm that you will be rewarded for content. So you see two people fighting. The instinctual response, it's Pavlovian at this point. Teenagers pull the cell phone out and you start filming. So the idea, I'm sure there are multiple videos. The question is why I haven't seen any. And so if it's police department or sheriff's department,
I don't.
And it's
Frisco Police Department.
Police department. So the police department, I would implore them to get it out. Obviously, blur out anything that's specifically gory. We don't want to see someone being killed, that for its own sake. But we want the evidence. And if that doesn't work, then I hope AG Paxton steps in because it really needs to be released.
This is a point. A lot of people have said. I've seen a lot of comments online. If this was self-defense, why hasn't the family released the footage? The simple response that you see from a lot of people on the left is they don't have the footage the police do. If the further argument is, if the footage came from the Memorial High School team or those individuals who were involved in the incident, if it was proof that it wasn't self-defense, why wouldn't they release it? And I don't think that matters because nobody is going to tell the police to give up public evidence if they're trying to convict a murderer. They're going to say, no, the story tells itself and we want a conviction, so we're not going to compromise that. I actually think this lends itself to not a self-defense in the case that this legal team, the family of Carmelo Anthony, would be publicly saying there's proof and video evidence that exonerates him and the police should release it, but they're not doing
doing press conferences in front of the courthouse every day saying, release the video, release the video, release the video.
They would be. And they're not doing that.
They absolutely could still be doing those press conferences, knowing full well that it won't get released by the police, obviously.
I think in a case like this, given the fact that there's so many people at this thing, given the fact that just the way cell phones work, I'd be surprised if the video doesn't either be officially released or get leaked at some point if it doesn't.
Well, if this is in any way favorable to the Anthony family, it's getting leaked in 2 seconds. Some liberal, they're unscrupulous, they're going to be like, put it out. I actually question why that's not been the case and what that actually shows. And there's a couple scenarios to look at in the way that the officer who responded initially, the way he described it. That is, we have two police statements. So there's many different police here. The officers who apprehended Anthony and two officers who responded to witnesses. The two stories that were provided based on witness response differ only slightly. But he basically says that Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under his team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, reached inside, and proceeded to tell Austin, touch me and see what happens. No one really thought Anthony had any weapons in the bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony, and then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what Redacted recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Austin began grabbing his chest and telling everyone to get help. Redacted advised he did not know Anthony's name, but stated another Memorial Tract member, whose initials are E and P, its name is Redacted, was friends with Anthony and he could identify Anthony. Redacted described Anthony as a black male, skinny with possibly a goatee, short puppy hair, wearing a Centennial High School clothing, and that concluded their contact. This tells us very little about what happened. And I believe the interpretation from the right largely is that Carmelo basically was getting in the face of Austin saying, touch me and see what happens. And that is possible. Mm-hmm. The other interpretation, which is much more, which the left is playing up, I would say, is that Austin approached him and was being the aggressor, and the touch me was a warning. This wasn't an enclosed space. Some other factors that matter was it was raining, and the police said that it began to heavy thunderstorm, downpour, upon arrival. All of these things factor in. Anthony was friends with a Memorial Tract team member. There's at least 6 high schools that were there at the time. Now, obviously, I think this falls under likely manslaughter at the bare minimum. But I will revise my statement upon discussion with your Jack when we looked up the laws, actually. Texas doesn't have a first-degree premeditated murder rule like other states. There is no distinction between premeditating a murder and accidentally killing someone, in which regard this is why they charged him with first-degree murder, not felony rule murder, and it's likely why he's going to get convicted of murder. That is, Texas law states if you engage in anything that is harmful or reckless that results in a death, that is first-degree murder. You don't have to premeditate it, in which case, by Texas law, that applies. My assessment of this was based probably on Illinois or New York law, which in other jurisdictions, you've got premeditated first degree, which I think was New York, meaning you went to a place with the intention of killing somebody.
Each state is
right.
Varies quite a bit. And Texas, I think, even more than most.
Right. So the important distinction here is Texas has only a manslaughter law and a first-degree murder law. And first-degree murder is you intended to kill somebody or you engaged in an activity that could reasonably cause someone to die.
Like stabbing them in the chest.
Stabbing them in the chest, exactly. In which case, it doesn't matter what the context is. He's not been charged, I understand it, under the felony murder rule, and a lot of people are claiming it's because he had a knife. This knife may not have been illegal. If it was less than 5.5 inches, it was legal for him to carry it in that school. The issue is...
Which, by the way, is another Texas... there's a specific Texas law, if I understand, that regarding self-defense that says if your life is lower than a certain level, then you can still declare self-defense even if you could have that knife on your person.
Right.
Like a pocket knife or something.
You can have an illegal weapon
but
and use it for self-defense.
You can automatically lose it if the knife that you are carrying is over a certain amount. And, lawyers, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something like that.
Here's what I think. I think with the news of the video footage, I think the police reviewed the footage and easily determined this was a first-degree murder. That is, I don't think Carmelo Anthony showed up with the intent to straight up murder somebody. I think Matt Walsh is correct. He felt disrespected. He didn't want to be made to stand in the rain. Austin was getting physical, but not to the extent that it warrants a stabbing. And Carmelo Anthony, feeling disrespected, feeling like, hey, you can't touch me, engaged in an action that was likely to cause death. And it resulted in a death, which is first-degree murder in Texas.
Right, and so the situation regarding that a lot of people have talked about, say, well, what if he just fought back? Would that have just been a fight? Yes, that would have been, right? That would have just been a fight. Or if he hadn't fought back, could potentially he have, pressed charges on Austin, which, for pushing him or something, perhaps. But I don't know if they would have actually brought it. But the point being is, just because you're in a fight with somebody doesn't give you the ability to pull out a knife and then stab them because you want to or you think you can. You need to have all of those elements of self-defense, predominantly being the imminent threat of fatal violence.
Now, I'm actually surprised that Texas is actually as light as they are in terms of the line separating self-defense and see, this is what I did not know about Texas. In West Virginia is very, very in favor of the, let's just say the person claiming the defense. So in this regard, I think it's the video evidence that made it easy for the police to charge this as it was.
Which I'm sure they would have collected. But you
Right away.
You don't see that in these statements, but because these statements, you would need the actual video verification before you could put that in a report, et cetera, et cetera. These are statements based on what they saw and what they heard, as opposed to a video report, which I'm sure is going to be coming out at some point, that will describe what was seen on the video. And but I'm sure these same officers collected those videos.
Exactly. I think very easily what is not put in these police reports is that the kids probably said, watch the video. Mm-hmm. And they probably saw the Carmelo Anthony clearly act in an escalatory manner. Yeah. But we'll see. And so I will say the clarifying points people need to understand, why was he under the tent? Many people are saying he was trespassing. He wasn't trespassing. There was at least 6 other high schools in this track meet. He was friends with one of the Memorial Team members, and it was about to rain. That's why he was there. This is the cause for what causes an altercation. Him not wanting to stand in the rain, most likely, feeling disrespected by being told to leave when he was friends with somebody. But clearly, he escalated it beyond what it needed to be. Again, we'll see how this one plays out.
I will say, though, that by that same token, that this judge should clearly have access to the evidence if she wanted to see the video. I don't know if it's been officially entered yet, but I'm sure this judge that dropped the bail down, which is in its own regard is obviously, I'm sure, by the way, that the DAs can go over and tell her, hey, we've got video of this, Judge, that this is really bad, and yet you're dropping it anyway, which would go to
That's a good point. This is weird.
Which would go to me and say, though, that she's doing this based more on ideological reasons than anything else.
I'm eager to see what happens with this one, because you're right. The police would say, Your Honor, upon review of the video, it is clear that this individual is a threat to his society, like to this community. And I wonder.
And she dropped it anyway. And he's out, by the way, which there is video of him walking out already right now.
Well, we're going to go to your chats, my friends. But before we do, we got a second sponsor. This is great. Crowd Health. Make sure you guys go to joincrowdhealth.com. Use promo code TIM and shout out to Crowd Health for supporting the show. We always love it when we get 2 sponsors. Crowd Health is, they say, health insurance is confusing, expensive, and frustrating, and claim denials are becoming more and more common. In fact, 1 in 5 Obamacare claims were denied last year. That's crazy. The headache of health industry is exactly why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. Stop sending money to big insurance companies who profit off of not paying your bills and check out Crowd Health. The truth is, big insurance companies profit by not paying your bills. You send them money every month, but when you actually need care, you're stuck fighting through red tape. That's why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance. It's community crowdfunding. Instead of paying into a system that works against you, You can join Crowd Health, where members support each other in times of need. For $175 a month for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll gain access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without insurance networks limiting your choices. It's time to stop paying into a broken system and start taking control of your healthcare. Join Crowd Health today and experience a smarter, fairer way to handle medical expenses. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using code TIM at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. One more time, joincrowdhealth.com, promo code TIM. Let's jump to your chats and see what you guys got going on. And don't forget, smash that like button, share the show. The uncensored call-in show will be coming up in 20 minutes over at rumble.com/Timcast IRL. Jay's Index says, shout out to the Discord. Indeed. 2A Willie says, he probably said they'll just say homegrowns are next. Just change word. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Trump could whisper and says, they're trying to claim that I'm going to put homegrowns next. And I'll just say, homegrowns are next, right? And then he says, I was saying they're, homegrowns are next. And he's going to need 5 more prisons. And everybody laughs because they know it's a joke. Andre Tukulescu says, oh no, it's Poso. This year, Catholic and Orthodox Easter are on the same date. So it's on for the 3-day fast, da?
Yeah, so I have, right, yeah, Конечно. I said this earlier on Twitter, but I said, hey guys, let's do a 3-day fast for Holy Week. So people know, Jesus died, and on the 3rd day he rose, so why don't we do a 3-day fast? And so we're starting it. I haven't quite figured out the times of this yet, but we're starting it on Holy Thursday, and then we're going through to Easter Sunday. And because the Ortho Bros, for once, and people know Tanya Tay, my wife, is Orthodox, that we're mending the schism. I'm saying this in the spirit of brotherly love as a Philly guy. Let's mend the schism. Let's do this together. The Catholics and the Ortho Bros
You're
together.
Catholic, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, big time.
I tweeted that Catholics are the superior Christians.
Whoa.
You have to fight. Do you guys fight over what's going to be on the Easter table for dinner for the between Catholics?
It's all good. No, it's. I mean, we're both like Slavic, so it's like the Easter dinner is pretty standard fare for both. No. We do like we do pierogies. My mom's already been working on pierogies, getting them ready for the big dinner. She did a couple test runs already last week, and then guamki, so pigs in the blanket, and kibasi, of course, just massive amounts of kibasi, and that's just for me. And then
the rest of the family
everybody else has to
what are
fight
they,
me off for that.
klatchkis?
Yeah, klatchkis, yeah.
Yeah.
You get klatchkis, we do blintzes, we do blini, we do like everything.
My neighborhood growing up was largely Polish, so I grew up with a lot of Polish food. It's amazing.
It's fantastic. Everything about Poland is fantastic.
So I'm 100% American, and I will eat all those things from Thursday onward, just so you don't have to miss out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, we got
70. By the way, so here I'm saying people can do because people keep asking me this. You can do 0 calorie, like black coffee, something with electrolytes. People say I gotta do diet soda. Fine, you could whatever you want. But if you could do 72 hours, 0 calories, only electrolytes. Yes, you can have water or black coffee and that other stuff, but that's it.
all right.
It's rough. I did it a couple weeks ago. It's rough.
Streamy LC, I think it says. Terrifying to see so many people go from supporting innocent until proven guilty when it comes to Rittenhouse and Trump, now flip-flop and go guilty until proven innocent with this current track meet case. And I completely agree. The issue is not those that think he's guilty. The issue is the people who are calling for Give, Send, Go to be boycotted and to shut down a fundraiser. That's wrong.
Yep.
But by all means, if people want to argue that he's guilty, and he's guilty, it has nothing to do with what happened to Trump or Rittenhouse.
Well, so, and the difference between the Rittenhouse case is, look, we saw the Rittenhouse case. If you were home and online that night and on Twitter, which we had Periscope back then, I wish to God they would bring it back. We would watch that like a TV show. I watched that like a TV show. All of the video was out there for every single person who was involved in that case. In this one, obviously, I don't think it was politically charged in any way like how Rittenhouse's was. It has become politically charged, but it wasn't in the first instance. That there is video. We don't have it yet. We need the video. Put it out.
But it's actually quite simple. Kyle Rittenhouse was clearly acting in self-defense and was innocent the whole time.
Yes.
They tried to kill him. They threatened to kill him. He ran. He turned himself into the police. All the things he was supposed to do. They fired shots at him, and it's a tragic situation.
Try to take his gun.
The issue is not whether or not these two things are the same, which the left is trying to argue. The question is, do you support due process right now? And I take large issue with the people calling for a boycott of Give, Send, Go, who did nothing wrong. They're a politically neutral platform that won't ban you when you try to defend.
It's so important that Give, Send, Go exists right now. They stood tall, by the way, and they faced a lot of government attempts at shutdown up in Canada for the Freedom Truckers, and they were sued. They were brought to court. They had to spend a ton of their own money to maintain that. So I would say, guys, like even if you disagree with the facts in this case, and even if you think, like I personally think that Carmelo Anthony is a murderer, that going after Give, Send, Go though is a hugely bad move and just a massive strategic error. This absolutely needs to exist if you want the right to continue to exist.
Yeah, and shout out to Jacob and Give, Send, Go for standing by their principles. And
no cancellation means no cancellation.
Yeah. Yep. All right, Jason Dixon.
Unless you were, by the way, actually raising it to commit crimes, right? Okay, sure, yeah, cancel that.
Yeah.
Jason Dixon says you should get Romanation on again. He lives just down the road from you.
He's great.
Indeed. All right, Big Cheese says Minnetonka PD made an arrest of an individual threatening violence at United Health headquarters. I think that's what we saw.
One? Yeah.
It's getting crazy, man. All right. Jason Dixon says, Tim, you are wrong about the self-defense with the kid who got pushed and stabbed. Pushing someone doesn't warrant deadly conduct. You have no reasonable argument for self-defense with being pushed equals deadly force. I am going to tell all of you right now with extreme passion, you are all wrong. I'm right about everything all the time, no matter what. I'm kidding. What I will
true.
say,
Tim paid me a lot of money before I came on tonight to say that he was right about Carmelo Anthony, and I said, "No, Tim, I will not do that."
We have a briefcase full of cash. I was like, Jack, just do it.
It was actually full of chickens.
No, actually, what happened is Jack and I, we were arguing it. We looked up the law and saw that there is no first or second degree murder in Texas. And the murder law in Texas literally is just if you act recklessly that causes death, it's first degree murder.
It was a spirited discussion.
Well, yeah, I don't know, but we were debating the issue. We were talking about the sentiment and everything. What I will say is two other things that really irk me about the current position for so many on the right, not literally everybody, but so many, is that because he had a knife illegally in the school, that makes it murder. Okay, no, that's throwing away the 2A, defensive 2A because of this one incident, which is not the case, presumably. I don't believe you should be able to vote away the right to keep and bear arms.
You can use a gun to defend yourself in a self-defense situation. Let's say that, let's say you're in a situation and maybe you're on, God forbid you're on, I don't want to say school grounds, but you know what I mean? A place that's a gun-free zone and you're not supposed to have it, but all of a sudden you get chased. Right, and there's a gang or Kyle Rittenhouse situation where the mob chasing you. Was he allowed to have a gun in all those places? He was. Fact of the matter, he was actually. But if let's say he ran through a school for purpose of the argument through a school zone. Oh my gosh, has he violated? Well, technically, right, but that still wouldn't make it murder.
But I will also say, I have utter disdain for the people who are pulling my clips of my show out of context. When one thing I said was the family is going to argue this, and then people have started posting that clip as if it was me making that argument because people are scumbags. The other thing I will say is I still disagree with. So based on the fact that video footage exists, the family has not called for its release, and that's a big factor here.
And they're posting pictures of Carmelo at the house, by the way, now.
Right. Yeah. But considering that, and considering the what is required for it to be murder, then then the self-defense claim is largely weak. That being said, the family is arguing self-defense. They're literally doing it. Doesn't mean they're going to win. But the issue is they're going to argue that he had these other people around him, and they're going to try and use that as justification for why pushing does warrant self-defense. And to counter, and I'm not saying they're right, but to counter Jason's point, where he says you have no reasonable self-defense for being pushed, that is not true at all.
Right.
A 5-foot-tall woman who weighs 100 pounds, who is confronted by a 6'8" man, 200 pounds, who shoves her, she does have a reasonable fear of great bodily harm. So I'm seeing a lot of people, they're trying to twist this one to make an argument when you literally need only look at the police report and the existing Texas law. And what's convinced me more solidly that this is murder is simply by reading Texas law and the behaviors of the family. I'm leaning more towards, I think this guy likely felt disrespected, didn't want to stand in the rain. And so he decided to escalate and assert himself in a situation where he should not have.
There's also, and you know, it doesn't necessarily bear on the legality of the case or the legal ramifications here, but we have noted already there was one incident where he was suspended from school. I believe he was either currently under suspension or he was skipping school that day when this all took place, the Carmelo Anthony, for carrying a knife inside his school, which he knows he's not supposed to do. And I guess there's also a report that his father was called to a court case to testify in some kind of assault altercation
related to him.
That was related to, what was it? They said it was related to the school, and they said it wasn't necessarily clear if it was related to Carmelo, but I mean, I can't.
No. I believe it was.
Okay.
That Carmelo was involved in some kind of assault at his school, but they don't know if that meant he was a victim, perpetrator, or witness. But again, I'm going to stress this. My point
Which doesn't have any bearing on the case.
My point the whole time was that the
stuff
likely
that's out there.
charge would be manslaughter, because that means he felt threatened but used unreasonable force. Considering my review of the Texas law, which I mistakenly assumed, and that's my fault, there is no there's no premeditation.
We asked Lawyer Grok.
We asked Lawyer Grok. There's no premeditation requirement for first-degree murder. It's just acting recklessly. And I'm like, oh, that's what I assumed manslaughter to be. In which case,
welcome to Texas.
That's why they're charging me. I get that. My point, however, is that there's a lot of people arguing they're saying you can't, if you get pushed, getting pushed is not a reason to use lethal force. No. And it's like, okay, Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't shoved. Okay, he was chased. Someone fired a gun. If the argument is plainly, as a blanket statement, being pushed isn't a fear of lethal force, there are many circumstances where pushing can be. And that's why I said, again, which is being taken way out of context, that we have argued it is not incumbent upon the victims of violent crime to determine the threshold by which the perpetrator would engage them. So recently, a guy was at a gas station and someone was shoplifting. And he shot at the shoplifter who fled, jumped off an overpass, and fell down and died because it was a huge overpass. And BLM is angry because this guy shot at the dude, causing him to panic and jump over an overpass to flee the gunfire, and then he died from his injuries. What is the argument right now for the gas station owner? Did he have a right to use lethal force against the guy for shoplifting? Of course he did not. BLM is now mad about this. Are they in the right? Why was the gas station owner shooting at a guy for shoplifting? He's not using lethal. He's not threatening the guy with any lethal force. So my point is, I want to see, and I'm not saying this. There's a lot of accounts online that want this case so badly that they're arguing for things that actually hurt self-defense arguments.
So I think in this whole Carmelo Anthony situation, the thing that is going to probably hurt both the state's case the most and help him out is the fact that he effectively gave his statement before they were able to Mirandize him. So everyone knows this. You have the right to remain silent. You should fucking do this.
No, I think that benefits him.
Why?
Yeah.
The first thing he said. So again, here's more clarification.
It hurts the state.
What's up?
You were saying it hurts the state.
It hurts the state.
Oh, okay, right.
This is why he's likely going to get off, because first off,
he'll get off.
Get off.
Well, I'm sure of this because
wait. I think he's right, and not for moral and legal reasons, but for political reasons.
He did stab a football star in Texas.
Yes,
and BLM is going to riot, and they're going to terrify the jurors.
That was not Mirandized, and they took his statement.
No, they didn't.
No, he said that to like press or something.
No, he said it to the police.
He said it directly to police.
They
recorded it.
So some important clarifications. Many people have said he fled the scene. Technically, that's correct, but he stayed at the track. He fled from where he stabbed Austin Metcalf to the other side of the track where he waited for police.
Yeah.
Police came and they approached him. He put his hands up. This is according to the police report. And he said, quote, "I was protecting myself." He then said again, "I told him not to touch me. I was protecting myself." He then asked an officer if that was self-defense, to which he responded, "I don't know." He does not need to be Mirandized. He blurted those things out, and the officers stated, "We did not ask him anything. He just yelled these things."
Yeah. So, I mean, and by the way, the prosecutors don't have to use that statement. For example, you actually, I mean, if this video footage shows what it shows. You don't need to use that statement at all.
Right.
The prosecution won't, and the defense
and they
will.
probably won't for that exact purpose.
But it greatly benefits the defense that he made those statements. Now, the only thing that really matters is when BLM shows up to the homes of jurors.
They can try, but yeah.
The only thing that matters in this case is Black Lives Matter will likely riot. They've raised $400,000 already. And when the jurors are being brought into the court under armed guard and chased by journalists threatening to expose their addresses, the jurors are going to say, not guilty.
Par for the course in most of these cases.
Do you think BLM is quite as strong as they once were? At least when it comes to street activism.
Real quick.
I'm not saying that he hasn't raised a lot of money, but I'm saying I just haven't seen BLM get activated the way they did 5 years ago. I'm really not.
But we have this quickly from Jason Dixon, who chimes in. That's called res gesti. He volunteered info that was never asked. It can be used. And he's an officer. Let's grab some more super chats here. All right. Law of self-defense says SCOTUS did not say Trump must provide the plane back for Abrego Garcia, merely said Trump ought not raise barriers to entry at border. Good luck getting to the border. Interesting. Interesting. We got more from Bronca. He says, Bukele is proving that we all know what we all know. If you want less crime, lock up criminals. Otherwise, we're all forced to live in an open-air prison with the criminals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shocker.
He says, if El Salvador adopts sensible gun laws for law-abiding citizens, I'll be buying a vacation home there.
I would say
people that actually are, violent criminals, or the number of people you actually have to lock up in comparison to the population of most cities, it's very small.
Yes.
You talk to beat cops or police officers, they know the scumbags. They know the guys that are committing crimes. They constantly interact with them. It doesn't take some kind of massive overhaul of the policing structure to figure out who the bad guys are and wrap them up and get them off the streets.
Bronca also adds, there's no law against housing convicted American prisoners in an El Salvadoran prison. That's merely being placed in a prison. It's not deportation. Deportation implies loss of rights to return to U.S. Interesting. So they can house U.S. inmates in El Salvador so long as they have all of their constitutional rights to appeal and do all of the things, no?
I just, for practical reasons, I don't necessarily see it happening.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I agree. And I would prefer Guantanamo Bay.
I think that's why Guantanamo exists as sovereign territory in Cuba.
Yeah. Who's running the prison? Who's
our oldest overseas base?
Yeah.
All right. DJI says, for serious crimes, two choices: death penalty or lifetime indentured servitude to your victim and or their family. For minor crimes, prison or service until debt paid.
I mean,
yeah,
I like creativity.
Yeah, I think that.
By the way, that's oh man, I get in trouble for saying this, but this is how a lot of debt bondage got started.
Yeah.
Actually,
and then I believe
in ancient times, corollary, caveat.
Well, I believe,
but this is how a lot of that stuff got started.
I believe the first slave in the U.S. was an indentured servant
I didn't say that word.
So the first slave in the United States was an indentured servant who couldn't pay their debt. And so the owner of the debt got a ruling from a court that individual would be in his service indefinitely, creating slavery.
So this is mass incarceration is a modern phenomenon. This is not something that existed in the ancient world, and all of these other various arrangements did exist in the ancient world, and so we did away with all of them, and now we have mass incarceration.
But in the ancient world, it was penalties of death were significantly more frequent.
Yes.
And also you could be exiled, which turned into death frequently.
I got to tell you guys.
That's where the word outlaw comes from.
If the penalty in Chicago for violent crime was they would put you in a diaper and make you wear a baby bonnet with a pacifier, and they would make you then hop down Roosevelt Avenue holding up a sign saying, I'm a big bad baby. And they made you do that every day for an hour with cops, and then people could watch and laugh. I'm not kidding. Crime would drop substantially. Oh, yeah, it really would.
Big time.
The reason why is much of the crime in those communities are honor driven.
That's right.
And when they
feel disrespected.
Indeed. Yeah. And when these gang members, and it's largely on the south side in the black community, but there's a Hispanic area, and they have all the different names. These individuals want to go to jail. They don't necessarily want to go to jail, but going to jail is like a badge of honor. Yep. And the way they talk is they say things like, I ain't been to jail yet. That's how they say it. When they go to jail, they don't view it as a punishment. They view it as a thing that happens. And they go and join other gang members in that jail and go about their business till they get out.
Right. Isn't that like the Arizona prison that gave all the pink jumpsuits and whatnot?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Judge Arpaio, or Sheriff Arpaio.
Yeah.
You make
Sheriff
Chicago
Arpaio.
gang members suckle the feet of other other people in the neighborhood who they victimized while wearing a baby diaper.
Right.
And crawling on the ground.
Yeah, so
while everyone laughed. They'd
Sheriff Arpaio down in Maricopa County, but when it used to be more red, was actually doing stuff like this with criminals.
I'm not saying we should.
And by the way, they went after him like crazy. They went after him like absolute crazy, saying that it was cruel and unusual, etc. But that's exactly what he was doing, was playing into exactly what you're talking about, Tim. This idea that there are alternative forms of justice that make it a deterrent to want to commit the crime. Kind of like by sending someone down to the El Salvadoran CCOT prison is a deterrent for people who are trying to illegally break into our country.
Indeed. All right, my friends, smash that like button. Share the show with everyone you know. The uncensored call-in show is about to begin at rumble.com/Timcast IRL, where you, as members of our Discord, can actually join in the show, but you got to join Rumble Premium to watch. So use promo code TIM10 over at, you can go to timcastpremium.com. It'll set you right up. You sign up, $10 off your annual membership. We are going to give you guys a free preview of the Uncensored Show before we kick it into our callers. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be fun, not so family friendly, but always fun and funny. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Jack, do you want to shout anything out?
Shout out the book Unhumans, Secret History of Communist Revolutions, How to Crush Them. That book has been going strong for almost a year at this point, because unfortunately we are living inside. And just for everyone out there, for all of my Western Christians and my Eastern Christians, Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Christ is King.
Find me on Quiet Part Pod on Rumble, Quiet Part Pod on YouTube, not Quiet Part Pod, Real Chris Cnosky on X. And, shout out to the Discord always. Shout out to all the great creators there that are actually trying to take it from that point further. Without that, we're not going to grow this community.
Right on.
Same as Chris. Check us out at the Quiet Part Pod on Rumble and YouTube. Special shout out to my girlfriend who I met in the Discord.
Wow.
So
nice.
Men out there that
dating.
haven't joined yet, get in there. Definitely join the Discord. It's a great place. Full of community and conversation and projects. There's lots of projects taking place in that Discord that you might potentially be valuable for and be able to input or provide input on. That's about it.
So go to timcast.com and click join us. Then you click Discord. All the instructions are there, and you guys can launch your own show. And we are trying to regularly feature community members who are working on shows. Now, I will say this, don't get me wrong. Literally not anybody from the Discord is going to pop up on Timcast IRL. These gentlemen just happen to be very prominent and creative, and they've done a really great job building up a show that has reached the threshold of professionalism that can, we can have a good show. We can't just take anybody randomly, except for the Culture War Live podcast, which will be Fridays, noon to 2. So what we're thinking right now is Saturday night, we are going to be at a live stage event, the pre-recorded episodes, but you guys as members of the Discord will be invited to join the stage. We'll just pick you. It's limited. It might be 6 to 8 people for one episode in 2 hours, but we might just be like, Bill Smith, come on up. So it'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, Phil.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. New record dropped on January 31st. It's called Anti-Fragile. You can check it out on all the streaming platforms. Don't forget the left lane is for crime.
We will see you all over at rumble.com/TimcastIRL in about 30 seconds. Thanks for hanging out.